I didn't mean to notice the exact moment the cold hit me. It happened somewhere between the last whistle and the parking lot clearing out, between the stadium lights clicking off one by one and the realization that everyone else had already found their cars, their rides, their way home. The noise of the game still rang in my ears. Cheering, shouting, that low roar that comes from too many people packed into metal bleachers under autumn skies. But now it was just us, just me and Jonah, standing at the edge of the field while the night settled in around us like something heavy. I shoved my hands deeper into my jacket pockets, curling my fingers against the chill. It wasn't unbearable yet, but I could feel it creeping in, that sharp bite that comes when the sun goes down too fast, and you realize you dress for the day, not the walk home after. Jonah was a few steps ahead, kicking at a pebble on the sidewalk, his breath visible in the air. He looked unbothered. He always looked unbothered. He glanced back at me, slowing his pace until we were side by side again. "Cold?" he asked, and there was something almost playful in his voice, like he already knew the answer. I shook my head. I wasn't about to admit it. Not to him. Not when he looked so perfectly comfortable in just his hoodie and jeans, like the temperature didn't touch him at all. But he must have seen something in the way I held myself, the way my shoulders had drawn in tight, because he stopped walking. I stopped too, confused, watching as he reached up and pulled the hoodie over his head in one smooth motion. Before I could say anything, before I could tell him I was fine, that he didn't need to do that, he draped it over my shoulders. The fabric was still warm from his body, soft and worn in, smelling faintly like detergent and something else I couldn't quite name. Grass, maybe. Or just him. I stood there for a second, stunned, my arms half raised like I didn't know what to do with them. Jonah didn't wait for me to figure it out. He just adjusted the hoodie, so it sat evenly on my shoulders, his hands lingering there for a heartbeat longer than they needed to, and then he stepped back like it was nothing. Like he hadn't just done something that made my chest feel too tight and my thoughts scatter in 6 different directions. He didn't say anything else. He just started walking again, his hands pushed into the pockets of his jeans now, his t-shirt catching the wind. I fell in a step beside him, pulling the hoodie closer around me, even though I wasn't sure if I was cold anymore or if I just needed something to hold on to. Our arms brushed as we walked. Once, twice, then again. Neither of us moved away. The streets were quieter than they had been an hour ago. Most of the cars had already peeled out of the lot, taillights disappearing down the main road toward the diner or the highway, or wherever people went after Friday night games. We took the long way, the route that cut through the neighborhoods, instead of staying on the main drag. It was darker this way, fewer streetlights, but it felt safer somehow. Private. I could still hear distant laughter from somewhere behind us. Probably the team piling into someone's truck, probably headed to celebrate another win. But it felt far away now, like it belonged to a different world. This one, the one where it was just me and Jonah walking side by side in the dark, felt quieter, smaller, more real. I didn't know what to say. I kept replaying the moment in my head, the way he'd pulled the hoodie off without hesitation, the way his hands had rested on my shoulders like it was the most natural thing in the world. I wanted to ask him why. I wanted to ask if it meant something. But I was afraid of the answer. Afraid it meant nothing. Afraid it meant everything. So I stayed quiet. I let the weight of the hoodie settle over me like a question I wasn't ready to ask out loud. Jonah kicked another pebble, watching it skitter across the pavement and disappear into the grass. He looked relaxed, unbothered, like this was just another walk home, just another night. But there was something in the way he stayed close to me, the way he didn't pull ahead like he usually did, that made me think maybe he was feeling it too. Whatever it was, the silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It never was with Jonah. But tonight it felt different, heavier, like it was holding something neither of us was ready to name. I glanced over at him, trying to be subtle about it, trying not to let him catch me looking. His profile was lit faintly by the glow of a distant porch light, his jaw sharp, his expression unreadable. He looked like he was thinking about something. Or maybe he was just cold. I couldn't tell. I wanted to give the hoodie back. I should have given it back. But I didn't. I kept it pulled tight around me, the sleeves hanging past my hands, the fabric soft against my skin. It felt like holding onto something fragile. Something I wasn't supposed to have. The noise of the game had faded completely now, swallowed up by the distance and the night. All I could hear was the sound of our footsteps on the sidewalk, the occasional rustle of wind through the trees, the quiet hum of a car passing a few streets over. It should have felt empty, but it didn't. It felt like something was beginning, something I hadn't asked for and didn't know how to handle, something that scared me in the best and worst way. Jonah didn't say anything for the rest of the walk. He just stayed close, his arm brushing mine every few steps, his presence steady and warm beside me. And I let him. I let myself feel the weight of the hoodie on my shoulders, the warmth of it, the way it smelled like him. I let myself wonder what it meant. I let myself hope it meant something. By the time we reached the corner where our streets split off in opposite directions, I still hadn't found the words. Jonah stopped, turning to face me, his hands still in his pockets, his expression soft in the dim light. He didn't ask for the hoodie back. He didn't say goodnight. He just looked at me for a long moment, like he was memorizing something, and then he smiled. Small, quiet, almost shy. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said. And then he walked away, disappearing into the dark, leaving me standing there with his hoodie still wrapped around my shoulders and a feeling in my chest I couldn't name. The quiet ahead felt like something new, something I wasn't ready for, something I wanted anyway. I've always been the kind of person who blends in. Not invisible, exactly, but easy to overlook. I learned early that if you don't take up too much space, if you don't ask for too much attention, people will let you exist quietly on the edges of things. And for a long time, that felt safe, comfortable even. I'm 22 now, still living in the same town I grew up in, still working the same part-time job at the bookstore on Main Street that I've had since I was 19. Most of my friends from high school left for college and never came back, or they stayed but drifted into different orbits, marriages, career tracks, lives that didn't leave much room for someone like me. I don't mind it, mostly. I like the quiet. I like the rhythm of shelving books and recommending novels to strangers and walking home through familiar streets where I know every crack in the sidewalk. But then there's Jonah. Jonah is 23, a year older than me, though sometimes it feels like more. He's the kind of person who fills a room just by walking into it. Not loud, not obnoxious, but magnetic in a way I've never been able to explain. People gravitate toward him. They always have. In high school, he was the one everyone wanted to sit with at lunch, the one who could make even the quietest person laugh, the one who moved through the world like he belonged everywhere he went. We've been friends since we were kids, back when proximity was enough to build a friendship. We lived on the same street, rode the same bus, spent summers riding bikes to the creek and winters building forts in his backyard. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. He became Jonah, the guy everyone knew, the guy everyone wanted to be around. And I stayed me, quiet, watchful, content to orbit. I never minded it. Not really. Being Jonah's friend felt like enough. It felt like more than I deserved, honestly, because Jonah didn't need me the way I needed him. He had other friends, better friends, people who could match his energy, who could keep up with his jokes and his plans and his restless need to always be doing something. But he kept me around anyway. He always made time, and I told myself that was enough. Lately, though, something has changed. I noticed it a few months ago, subtle at first, like the shift in light before a storm. The way he started texting me more often. The way he'd show up at the bookstore on his lunch break, even though there was nothing he needed to buy. The way his jokes softened when it was just the two of us, the teasing giving way to something quieter, more careful. The silences between us stretched longer, but they didn't feel empty. They felt full, heavy, like there was something building in the space between words, something neither of us knew how to name. And his eyes. God, his eyes. I started catching him looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. At the diner after work, across the table while I scrolled through my phone. At the game last Friday, when I glanced over and found him already watching me, his expression unreadable in the glow of the field lights. He'd look away quickly, like he'd been caught doing something he shouldn't, and I'd pretend I hadn't noticed. But I had. I always did. I didn't let myself think too much about what it meant. I couldn't, because Jonah wasn't like me. Jonah lived for moments of motion and noise and laughter. He thrived in crowds, at parties, surrounded by people who fed off his energy the way plants feed off sunlight. He wasn't the kind of person who thought too hard about things, who got stuck in his own head the way I did. He moved through life easily, effortlessly, and I'd accepted a long time ago that I was just along for the ride. But that night, the night he gave me his hoodie, something cracked open inside me. Something I'd been keeping carefully locked away. I let myself notice. I let myself feel the weight of his hands on my shoulders, the warmth of the fabric against my skin, the way he stayed close as we walked. I let myself wonder if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't nothing. If maybe the reason he kept showing up, kept finding excuses to be near me, was because he felt it too. Whatever it was. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I told myself I was reading into things, seeing what I wanted to see instead of what was actually there. But when I got home that night and hung his hoodie on the back of my desk chair, I couldn't stop staring at it. Couldn't stop replaying the way he'd looked at me before he walked away, that small, quiet smile that felt like a secret. I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about the way our arms had brushed as we walked, the way neither of us had pulled away, the way the silence between us had felt like a conversation we were too afraid to have out loud. And I realized, lying there in the dark with his hoodie, still smelling faintly like him, that I'd been hiding for a long time. Not just from Jonah, from myself. But that night, for the first time, I let myself stop hiding. I let myself feel everything I've been pushing down. I let myself hope, and it terrified me. The next day, Jonah showed up at the bookstore during my shift like nothing had happened. Like the night before had been perfectly ordinary, unremarkable, just another walk home after just another game. He leaned against the counter while I scanned returns, that easy grin on his face, and said, "You look like a lost kid in my hoodie." I tried to laugh. I tried to match his tone, to play it off the way he was playing it off. But my heart was still replaying the moment his hands had settled on my shoulders, the weight of them, the warmth, the way they'd lingered just a heartbeat too long before letting go. I mumbled something about being cold, about appreciating it, and he just shrugged like it was nothing, like he handed out his clothes to people all the time. Maybe he did. I didn't know. I didn't want to know. He bought a coffee from the shop next door and sat in the reading corner for an hour, scrolling through his phone, occasionally looking up to catch my eye and smile. And I tried to focus on work, on organizing shelves and helping customers, but I kept glancing over at him, kept wondering why he was still there, what he was waiting for. When my shift ended, he walked out with me. Didn't ask if I wanted company. Just fell in his step beside me like it was expected, like we'd planned it. The hoodie was folded in my bag. I'd washed it that morning, carefully, then folded it even more carefully, telling myself I'd give it back today. But when we reached the parking lot and he turned to say goodbye, I didn't pull it out. I kept it hidden in my bag like a secret I wasn't ready to return. He didn't ask about it. He just said he'd see me around and walked away, hands in his pockets, that same easy stride that made everything look effortless. A week passed. 7 days of normal conversations and casual texts, and me trying to convince myself that I'd imagined the weight of that night, the significance I'd assigned to something that was probably just kindness, just Jonah being Jonah. Then Friday came again. Another game, another crowd, another victory that sent everyone spilling out into the parking lot, buzzing with energy and adrenaline. I found myself looking for him in the chaos. I told myself I wasn't, but I was. And when I finally spotted him near the bleachers, laughing with some guys from the team, something in my chest tightened. He saw me at the same moment. Our eyes met across the distance, and he smiled. Not the easy grin he gave everyone else. Something smaller. Something just for me. He said something to the guys, clapped one of them on the shoulder, and then he was walking toward me, weaving through the crowd like he had somewhere important to be. "You walking?" he asked when he reached me. I nodded. I always walked. He knew that. He nodded too, like that settled something, and we started moving toward the edge of the lot, away from the noise, toward the quiet streets that would take us home. The cold hit faster this time. The temperature had dropped throughout the game, and now the wind cut through my jacket like it wasn't even there. I try not to shiver. Try to keep my shoulders relaxed, my breathing steady. But Jonah noticed. Of course he noticed. He didn't say anything. Didn't ask if I was cold, didn't tease me about it. He just reached up and pulled his hoodie over his head in one smooth motion, the same way he had a week ago, and before I could say a word, it was draped over my shoulders again. Only this time, I didn't protest. I didn't pretend to be surprised. I just pulled it closer around me and whispered, "Thank you." He didn't respond. He just started walking, and I fell in a step beside him. But this time, he didn't keep the careful distance he usually maintained. This time, he walked close enough that our arms brushed with every step, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off him even in the cold. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. Every point of contact felt electric, intentional, like he was saying something without words, and I was finally learning how to listen. We didn't talk much. A few comments about the game, about the cold, about nothing that mattered. But the silence between the words felt different now. Heavier. Fuller. Like we were both holding our breath, waiting for something neither of us knew how to start. When we reached my street, he stopped. He didn't say goodbye right away. He just stood there, hands shoved in his pockets, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I should have given the hoodie back. I should have slipped it off and handed it to him and said thanks again and walked away. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "You're going to freeze." He smiled, soft and a little sad. "I'm fine." We stood there for another moment, the space between us feeling like both too much and not enough. Then he took a small step back, breaking whatever spell had settled over us. "See you tomorrow," he said. And I watched him walk away again, his figure disappearing into the dark, leaving me standing under the streetlight with his hoodie still warm around my shoulders and a feeling spreading through my chest that I couldn't name and couldn't fight anymore. Because I was starting to understand. This wasn't about the cold. It had never been about the cold. This was Jonah finding a reason, an excuse, a way to touch me, to be close to me, to give me something of his without having to explain why. And I was letting him. More than that, I was starting to need it. It became routine after that. Every Friday night, the same pattern. The game would end, the crowd would scatter, and somehow, without planning it, without discussing it, Jonah would find me. Sometimes I'd see him coming from across the parking lot, that familiar stride cutting through the chaos. Sometimes he'd just appear beside me like he'd been there all along. Either way, the result was always the same. We'd start walking, and before we'd made it 2 blocks, his hoodie would be draped over my shoulders. After the 3rd week, he stopped waiting for the cold to set in. He'd pull it off before we even left the parking lot, before I could even pretend I didn't need it, and hand it to me like it was expected, like it was part of the routine we'd built without meaning to. I stopped protesting, stopped pretending I didn't want it. I'd take the hoodie and pull it on, and we'd walk, and the silence between us would fill with all the things neither of us was saying. By the 4th week, he wasn't even wearing it to the games anymore. He'd bring it separately, folded over his arm or tied around his waist, carrying it like an offering, like he'd accepted what it was really for. I started to notice other things too. The way he'd position himself on my right side, always so that our arms would brush as we walked. The way he'd slow his pace to match mine, even though his legs were longer, even though I knew he could walk faster. The way he'd glance over at me when he thought I wasn't looking, his expression soft in the glow of the streetlights. We talked more on those walks than we did any other time. About everything and nothing. About work and old memories and the people we used to know. About his plans to maybe move to the city someday. Maybe try something new, though he never sounded convinced when he said it. About my contentment with staying, with the bookstore, with the familiar rhythm of a life that didn't ask too much of me. But we never talked about what we were doing. Never acknowledged the ritual we'd created, the intimacy of it. Never named the thing that was growing between us with every walk, every brush of arms, every moment his hoodie settled around my shoulders like it belonged there. I think we were both afraid to. Afraid that naming it would break it, would force us to confront what it meant and what we wanted and whether we were brave enough to reach for it. One night, about 6 weeks in, something shifted. The game had been closer than usual, gone into overtime, and by the time it ended, most of the crowd had thinned out. Just the diehards left, the ones who'd stay until the lights went dark. Jonah and I walked in near silence, the exhaustion of the evening settling over both of us. He handed me the hoodie without a word. I pulled it on without thinking. We started walking, but halfway home I stopped. Right there in the middle of the sidewalk, under a street light that flickered like it was trying to decide whether to give up entirely. Jonah took a few more steps before he realized I wasn't beside him anymore. He turned back, concern crossing his face. "What's wrong?" he asked. I looked down at the hoodie, at the way the sleeves hung past my hands, at the fabric I'd worn so many times now that it felt like mine. Then I looked back up at him. "You can keep it this time," I said quietly. "You don't have to keep doing this." His expression shifted. Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or fear. He took a step closer. "What if I don't want to?" he said, and his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. I felt my heart stutter. "What?" "Keep it," he clarified, but there was something else beneath the words, something heavier. "What if I don't want to stop doing this?" The air between us felt charged, fragile, like we were standing on the edge of something we couldn't take back. "Why?" I asked, even though part of me already knew. Even though I'd known for weeks, maybe longer. "Why do you keep doing this?" He looked at me for a long moment, and I watched something crumble in his expression, some wall he'd been holding up finally giving way. "Because it gives me a reason," he said, and his voice cracked slightly on the last word. "A reason for what?" He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the way his chest rose and fell with each breath, close enough that the space between us felt like it was disappearing. "To touch you," he said. "To be close to you. To see you wearing something that's mine." The words hung in the air between us, trembling and raw and true. I stood there, frozen, the hoodie pulled tight around me, and realized that the warmth I felt had nothing to do with the fabric anymore. It was him. It was this. It was the truth he'd finally let slip, the thing we'd both been dancing around for weeks. "Jonah," I whispered, but I didn't know what to say after that. Didn't know how to respond to something that felt too big, too fragile, too important to put into words. He looked at me, waiting, his eyes searching mine like he was trying to find an answer I hadn't given yet. And in that moment, under the flickering streetlight with his hoodie around my shoulders and his confession still echoing in the space between us, I understood. This wasn't just kindness. It wasn't just friendship. It was Jonah's way of reaching for me without having to risk everything. His way of saying what he couldn't say out loud. Until now, the silence stretched between us, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like the moment before something breaks open, before everything changes. Jonah stood there waiting, his eyes never leaving mine, and I could see the fear in them now. The vulnerability. The risk he'd just taken by saying it out loud. "Because it gives me a reason to touch you. Because I like seeing you in something that's mine." The words kept repeating in my head, each time landing with more weight, more truth. This person who moved through the world so easily, who everyone gravitated toward, who seemed to have everything figured out. He'd been just as scared as me, just as uncertain, just as desperate for a reason, an excuse, a way to be close without having to name what he was feeling. I realized I was still standing there, frozen, the hoodie pulled tight around me like armor. Like I could hide inside it and not have to face this moment, this choice. But I didn't want to hide anymore. My voice came out quieter than I intended, barely more than a whisper. "Why didn't you just tell me?" Jonah let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Just exhaustion. Just relief at finally being able to say it. "Because I didn't know how," he said. "Because every time I tried to find the words, they felt too big, too real." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd seen 1,000 times but never understood until now. Because what if I was wrong? What if you didn't feel the same way and I ruined everything? "You thought giving me your hoodie every week was less risky?" I asked, and despite everything, despite the way my heart was racing and my hand was shaking, I almost smiled. He did smile then, small and sad and achingly honest. "I thought it was safer. I thought if I could just be near you, if I could find these small ways to take care of you, maybe that would be enough. Maybe I could live with that." "But it wasn't enough," I said. "It wasn't a question." "No," he admitted. "It wasn't." We stood there under the flickering streetlight, the night stretching out around us, quiet and cold and infinite. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear a car passing, the sound fading quickly into nothing. The world felt very small suddenly. Just me and Jonah, and the truth hanging in the air between us. I thought about all the weeks of walking home together, all the moments when our arms brushed and neither of us pulled away. All the times I caught him looking at me, and convinced myself I was imagining it. All the nights, I'd lain awake with his hoodie draped over my chair, wondering what it meant, too afraid to let myself hope. I'd spent so long learning how to fade into the background, how to not ask for too much, how to accept whatever scraps of closeness people were willing to give me. I convinced myself that being Jonah's friend was enough, that I didn't deserve to want more. But standing there with his confession still echoing in my ears, I realized something. I was tired of settling, tired of hiding, tired of pretending that this small ritual we'd created was enough when what I really wanted was standing right in front of me, terrified and honest and waiting. I took a breath, then another. Then I made myself say the thing I'd been too afraid to say for weeks, maybe months, maybe years. I asked you why you keep doing this, I said softly. But I never told you why I let you. Jonah's eyes widened slightly. He took a small step closer, close enough now that I could reach out and touch him if I wanted to. Close enough that the space between us felt like both a chasm and nothing at all. Why? He asked, and his voice was barely a whisper, because it was the closest I could get to telling you how I felt without actually saying it. I admitted, because every time you put this hoodie on me, every time you walked close enough that our arms touched, it felt like you were saying something I was too afraid to hope for. Because I needed it too, Jonah. I needed the excuse. Something shifted in his expression. The fear gave way to something else. Relief, maybe, or wonder, or just the pure, overwhelming weight of being seen. Reese, he breathed, and my name had never sounded like that before. Like it meant something. Like it mattered. I'm tired of pretending, I said, and my voice was stronger now, steadier. I'm tired of walking home beside you and pretending I don't want more. I'm tired of taking your hoodie and pretending it's just about the cold when we both know it never was. The words came easier now, like something inside me had finally unlocked. Like I'd been holding my breath for so long and was finally letting it out. So stop pretending, I said. Stop pretending it's just about keeping me warm or finding reasons to touch me or whatever excuse you've been telling yourself. Just stop. Jonah stared at me, and I watched his understanding spread across his face as hope flickered to life in his eyes. What do you want me to do? He asked, and I could hear the tremor in his voice, the careful, fragile hope. I reached for his hand, slowly, tentatively, giving him every chance to pull away. My fingers brushed his, then curled around them, holding on. I want you to stop pretending, I repeated quietly. And I want you to let me stop pretending too. His hand tightened around mine, his fingers interlacing with my own, holding on like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. Okay, he whispered. Okay. We stood there for a long time, hands intertwined, neither of us moving. The streetlight flickered above us, and somewhere in the distance a dog barked, but it all felt far away, like we existed in our own small pocket of the world where nothing else could touch us. I could feel Jonah's pulse through his fingertips, rapid and unsteady, matching the rhythm of my own heart. His thumb traced small circles against the back of my hand, such a simple gesture, but it felt monumental, intentional, real. I should say something, he said finally, his voice quiet. Something better than okay. I shook my head. Okay is enough. But his eyes were searching mine, looking for something, and I realized he needed to say it. Needed to make it real with words, not just touch. I wanted this for so long, he said. Wanted you for so long. And I kept telling myself I was imagining it, that you couldn't possibly feel the same way. That I was just your friend, and that's all I'd ever be. How long? I asked, even though part of me was afraid of the answer. He let out a breath, almost like a laugh. Remember sophomore year? That party at Jake's house. I remembered. It was one of the few parties I'd ever gone to, dragged along by Jonah, who insisted I needed to get out more. I'd spent most of the night standing in the corner, nursing a drink I didn't want, watching Jonah work the room the way he always did. You spent half the night talking to me in the kitchen, he said. Everyone else was playing beer pong or dancing or whatever, and you just stood there telling me about this book you were reading. Some sci-fi thing about time travel and parallel universes. You were so excited about it, so animated. I'd never seen you like that before. I barely remember the conversation. I remembered feeling out of place, remembered Jonah checking on me every so often, but I'd assumed he was just being nice. Just being Jonah. And I remember thinking, he continued, that I could listen to you talk about anything forever. That I wanted to know every thought in your head, every story you loved, every little thing that made you light up like that. And I got scared because I never felt that way about anyone before. That was almost 5 years ago, I said quietly. I know. He squeezed my hand gently. I've been carrying it around for 5 years, trying to figure out what to do with it. Trying to find ways to be close to you that didn't give me away. And then the hoodie thing just happened. And suddenly I had this excuse, this routine, and I thought maybe that could be enough. Maybe I could just have this small piece of you, and that would be okay. But it wasn't, I said. No, it wasn't. Every week it got harder. Every time you smiled at me, when I put the hoodie on you, every time our arms brushed while we walked, I wanted more. I wanted to tell you. I wanted to just reach out and hold your hand like this. He lifted our joined hands slightly, looking at them like he still couldn't quite believe it was real. But I was terrified. I was terrified too, I admitted. I thought you were just being kind. I thought I was reading into things, seeing what I wanted to see instead of what was actually there. What did you want to see? This, I said simply. You wanted me the way I wanted you. The words felt huge in the quiet night air, but also inevitable. Like they'd been waiting all this time to be spoken, and now that they were out, everything made sense. Jonah stepped closer until there was barely any space between us at all. His free hand came up to my face, his fingers brushing against my cheek with a gentleness that made my breath catch. Can I kiss you? He asked, and the question was so soft, so careful, like he was still afraid I might disappear. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and then his lips were on mine. It was gentle at first, tentative, like we were both still learning how to do this, how to be this to each other. But then his hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and I let go of everything I'd been holding on to, all the fear, all the doubt, all the years of convincing myself I didn't deserve this. When we finally pulled apart, Jonah rested his forehead against mine, both of us breathing hard, our hands still clasped between us. We should probably finish walking home, he said eventually, but he didn't move. Probably I agreed, not moving either. But when we finally did start walking again, everything was different. Jonah didn't let go of my hand. He kept it held firmly in his, our fingers intertwined, our arms no longer just brushing accidentally, but connected, anchored. The hoodie stayed around my shoulders, but it felt different now. Not like an excuse, or a substitute, or a way to be close without admitting why. Just comfort, just care, just Jonah giving me something of his because he wanted to, because he could, because we didn't have to hide anymore. We walked the rest of the way in silence, but it was the good kind. The kind that felt full instead of empty. The kind that didn't need words because everything had already been said. When we reached my street, Jonah didn't let go. He walked me all the way to my door, something he'd never done before. And when we got there, he kissed me again, slower this time, like we had all the time in the world. I'll see you tomorrow, he said when we finally pulled apart. You better, I replied, and he smiled, that same smile from before, but brighter now, unburdened. I watched him walk away, but this time it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning, like everything was finally starting. It's been 3 months since that night under the streetlight. 3 months since we stopped pretending. 3 months since everything changed and somehow stayed exactly the same. Jonah still brings the hoodie to every game. It's habit now, muscle memory, something so ingrained in our routine that I don't think either of us could stop even if we wanted to. He carries it folded over his arm or tied around his waist, and I've stopped asking why he bothers when he knows he won't be wearing it. Because we both know who it's for. We've always known. The difference now is that he doesn't wait for the cold to justify it. Doesn't wait for me to shiver or stuff my hands in my pockets or give him any excuse at all. The moment the game ends and we find each other in the thinning crowd, he just drapes it over my shoulders like it's the most natural thing in the world. Like it belongs there. Like I belong there. And maybe I do. We walk home the same way we always have, through the quiet streets where the streetlights cast long shadows and the noise of the game fades into memory. But now Jonah holds my hand the entire way. No more accidental brushing of arms. No more careful distance. Just his fingers laced through mine, steady and sure, like he's anchoring us both. Sometimes we talk. about work, about the game, about nothing important. Sometimes we walk in silence, and that's okay too. The silence doesn't feel heavy anymore. It doesn't feel like it's hiding anything. It just feels peaceful, safe. Last Friday, after a particularly close game that went into double overtime, we were both exhausted. Jonah pulled the hoodie over my head instead of just draping it on my shoulders, tugging it down gently and adjusting the hood with a small smile. "There," he said. "Perfect." I rolled my eyes, but I was smiling too. "You know, it's not even that cold tonight." He shrugged, taking my hand as we started walking. "Doesn't matter." And it doesn't. We both know it never mattered. The hoodie was never about the weather. It was about this. About us. About Jonah finding a way to take care of me, to show me he was thinking about me, to give me something of his that I could carry home. And now that we don't have to hide behind it anymore, now that we can just be together without excuses or pretenses, it's become something even better. It's become a promise, a reminder, a small ritual that belongs only to us. Sometimes on the really cold nights, Jonah doesn't give me the hoodie at all. Instead, he wraps it around both of us, pulling me close against his side so we're sharing the warmth, walking home pressed together like we're one person instead of two. Those are my favorite nights. The ones where the boundaries between us blur, where I can feel his heartbeat against my shoulder and his breath warm against my temple. He still makes jokes about it sometimes. Last week, as he was tying the hoodie loosely around both our shoulders, he said, "Told you it looks better on you." I looked up at him, at the softness in his eyes, at the smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You say that every time." "Because it's true every time," he replied, and then he kissed my forehead, casual and easy, like he'd been doing it forever. Maybe in some way he has been. Maybe every time he gave me that hoodie, every time he walked close enough for our arms to touch, every time he looked at me like I was something worth seeing, maybe those were all just different versions of this. Different ways of showing me what he couldn't say out loud yet. I think about that sometimes. About how long we circle around each other, both too afraid to reach out, both convinced the other couldn't possibly feel the same way. About all the time we wasted when we could have had this. The hand-holding, the casual kisses, the easy intimacy of knowing we belong to each other. But then I think about those walks home, about the quiet ritual we built together, about the way the hoodie became a language between us when words felt too dangerous. And I realized maybe we needed that time. Maybe we needed to learn how to be close before we could learn how to be together. The hoodie still smells like him, like soap and grass, and something uniquely Jonah that I can't describe but would recognize anywhere. Sometimes on the nights when he doesn't come over, when we're both too tired or too busy or just need a night to ourselves, I'll pull it on and sit in my room with a book, wrapped in the warmth and the scent and the reminder that this is real, that he's real, that we're real. He caught me wearing it once, showed up unexpectedly in my apartment, and found me curled up on the couch in his hoodie, reading. He just smiled, that soft smile that's become so familiar, and said nothing. Just sat down beside me, pulled me against his side, and stayed. We don't talk about what this is exactly. We don't put labels on it or make grand declarations or plan for some distant future we can't predict. We just exist together, day by day, walk by walk, moment by moment. And somehow that feels like enough. More than enough. Last night, after the game, Jonah pulled the hoodie over my shoulders and we started our walk home. Halfway there, he stopped suddenly, turning to face me under a streetlight. "What?" I asked, concerned. He just looked at me for a long moment, his eyes searching mine, and then he smiled. "Nothing. Just wanted to look at you." My cheeks flushed, but I smiled back. "You're ridiculous." He pulled me closer, the hoodie still draped around my shoulders, his arms wrapping around me. "Maybe, but I'm your ridiculous." "Yeah," I whispered against his chest. "You are." And standing there in the quiet, in the cold, wrapped in his hoodie and his arms and the certainty of this thing between us, I realized something. I'd spent so long learning how to fade into the background, how to not take up space, how to accept whatever small pieces of affection people were willing to give. But Jonah never let me fade. He saw me when I was trying to be invisible. He reached for me when I was convinced I wasn't worth reaching for. And now, wearing his hoodie on these walks home, I finally understand what it means to be seen, to be wanted, to belong to someone who belongs to me too. The hoodie was never about the cold. It was about this. It was always about this.